let's start with number 25, Texas A&M. Now, I get accused a lot of hating on Texas A&M. I don't feel like I do. I feel like I have been very fair to Texas A&M over the years because Texas A&M has been basically the same program for a long time. Outside of a couple of outlier years, like the Manziel year, they've been basically a middle-of-the-road team in their conference dating back until, 1999, right after the Sir Parker win in the Big 12 championship game. And then ever since then, they've been a bit of a middle-of-their-conference team. We've been told that they should be better. They've been ranked a lot higher than that. But to me, it's a wait and see, even with the new coach and Mike Elko in his first year. The roster is going to have to rebuild after they lost a ton of those guys that were highly recruited but didn't really pan out to the transfer portal. We'll see how Elko does. They do have Connor Wigman back as their quarterback. When he's been healthy, he's been pretty good. They've got a fun opening game against Notre Dame. All right, I'll go a little bit quicker through some of these. Iowa at 24. If they play offense, they're going to be good. Iowa won 10 games last year with the worst offense in the country. Can you imagine if they just had an average offense? It's basically the same conversation that we have with USC. USC, imagine if they just had an average defense. What would they be? Well, it's basically the same with Iowa. Cade McNamara back at QB. In their schedule, by the way, they do avoid Oregon, Michigan, Penn State, and USC. So Iowa, they're not going anywhere. 23, I got Kansas. I like Kansas. It's also a bit of a wait and see because when they have their quarterback, Jalen Daniels, they're very good, and I would rank them higher than this. But he can't stay healthy. And when he's not healthy, then they wouldn't be ranked right here. So this is a bit of a middle of the pack, if you will, or middle ground with me. Devin Neal is back. He was a 1,200-yard rusher. They do miss their offensive coordinator or could miss him. Andy Koltonicki is now the OC at Penn State. So we'll see how that affects Kansas. At 22, Nebraska. That's right, Nebraska. I think Nebraska is going to be a pretty darn good football team. They won 5 games a year ago in year number 1 for Matt Rule. And yet, they should have been a lot better. Their defense was a top 20 defense in the country, scoring and yards. And granted, you could say that about a lot of Big Ten West teams, but those were the numbers. They lost 4 games by exactly 3 points. And in those games, they had 15 turnovers. Folks, 15 turnovers. 13 of those 15 were by the quarterbacks. They were minus 17 in the turnover margin last year, which was the second worst in the country. So they won 5 and they lost 4, all by exactly 3 points with those turnover numbers. It does not take a rocket scientist to know that if Dylan Raiola is just a little bit better at quarterback, which I think he can be, in particular from a turnover standpoint, this could easily be a team that wins 8 or 9 football games. Nebraska is a good program, and I think Matt Rule is a heck of a coach. He's worked everywhere that he's been. Temple, Baylor. They don't have to play Oregon. They don't have to play Michigan, and they don't have to play Penn State. To me, they could be 7-0 headed into that Ohio State game. I think their toughest game before that game is probably Colorado. We'll see if they can beat Colorado, and that's in the eighth game of the year, that Ohio State game. I think Nebraska is an interesting one. They could wind up a lot higher than this. Watch out for Nebraska. 21, I've got Arizona. This is a belief in Noah Fafita. It's a belief in what they were able to do a year ago. Great job holding on to Fafita. They got Teteroa McMillan, obviously, a standout wide receiver. They stay in Tucson, even after Jed Fish departs there to Washington. They also had a talented corner leave, so a lot of this is just the Fafita effect, because I do think Arizona may take a bit of a step back after Fish left for Washington. At 20, I've got Kansas State. Chris Kleiman is a guy that I really believe in, and I know that they lost their quarterback, Will Howard, to Ohio State in the transfer portal, but that's because of Avery Johnson, Sunshine, as they call him. Avery Johnson was going to be the quarterback, so Will Howard kind of had to leave. All right. Now, it was an amicable exit. The reason I know that, Will Howard's younger brother enrolled and is going to be on the Kansas State team. He's going to be part of the program. So this was not an exit that got nasty. I think that the Howard family still likes Chris Kleiman, wants to be a part of that program. Kleiman has won 8 games in every non-COVID year that he's had at K-State. He went 9-4, of course, won the Big 12 a couple of years ago. Another Big 12 team, a lot of Big 12 in here. We've got Kansas, we've got Kansas State, and now we've got Oklahoma State. They lost in the Big 12 championship game 2 years ago, or last season to Texas, excuse me. Alan Bowman got his 7th year of eligibility, so he's going to start his 1,059th game. Obviously, that's an exaggeration. He's started 29 in his career, to be exact. They've got Doak Walker Award winner Ollie Gordon back, and they're going to be a veteran team, very similar to that 21 team that made it to the Big 12 championship game with Spencer Sanders as their quarterback. They lost that game to Baylor. Mike Gundy is one of the best coaches in America. He's one of the longest tenured coaches in America. He's a guy that I highly respect. So I think Oklahoma State is a team that could be dangerous. This is a team that I think could win the Big 12. Now, they get the best team in the Big 12 at home, I believe, which is Utah. And to me, that's kind of the best game of the league, at least in the regular season. At number 18, we've got Miami. Miami and A&M, to me, are a little bit synonymous, just because of the fact that we're constantly told how much better they're going to be based on their recruiting, but then we don't see that on the field. And I think that that's fair. That is fair. They have done really well in the transfer portal. Mario Cristobal can recruit. They get QB Cam Ward from Washington State, Damian Martinez from Oregon State. He had over 2,000 yards the last couple of years. Restrepo is back at wide receiver for what feels like his 10th season. We're getting a lot of that in college football. And their schedule is one of the easiest in the country. So they very easily could be higher than this. But again, this is a bit of a wait and see. Remember last year when I talked about Texas as in like, hey, let's not talk about Texas until Texas does something. That's a bit how I feel about Miami. I'm bullish on Miami, but it's still a cautious bullishness, if that's a word. Does that even work, or is that like a double negative? A cautious bullishness? You know what? We're going to go with it because that's kind of Miami. It's like one step forward, one step back, 2 steps forward. Let's take a knee. Let's not take a knee. Let's lose the game. Let's have the season fall apart. That's kind of been Miami. And you look at their schedule, their toughest games at Florida, opener. Gators are only 5-7. At Louisville, that's the 7th game. And home against Florida State, that's the 8th game. They've got to prove it. They got to prove it. Thank you for watching the Joel Klatt Show YouTube channel. And if you liked this clip, make sure to like it and subscribe to the channel. And you can stay up to date on all of my college football coverage.